All right, so we're gonna look at some screen captures here from practice, just to talk about, do like a little track walk. I used to do this a lot in the last few years when John had his camera up after the races. It was really helpful for me in understanding what the car actually does. Um, what you see from the driver's stand versus what someone sees standing on trackside, um, versus what is actually happening are all little snippets or pieces of the puzzle. So understanding what the car is actually doing. So of course some people just get it, you know what I mean, subconsciously, whatever they come in. Usually younger folks, they come in and they have the talent, and it just the understanding, the innate understanding of what's happening, so they don't go through this much of a thought process. But for me, I've always felt that I was missing something, and this was the only way that I could figure in understanding it. And everybody, I encourage you to find your own way, or if this gives you an idea, just kind of do that, and just search for understanding, so that what you're doing is for a purpose. So as you can see, when you slow things down and you look at the cars, of course we had low traction, but you can see that what rotation is. So rotation is the rear of the car sliding around. So the car is actually pivoting around a point in the car, in sort of in the middle of the car, or the front of the car, or the back of the car, depending on your setup. But you're always right. The rotation comes from basically drifting, right? So slip angle is another term for it. So the rear tires have more of a slip angle than the fronts. Um, so I'll do a couple here. So whoever's in shot here. So we have Alfred in shot. So he's going around the sweeper. You'll notice how his car is hooked up, hooked up, hooked up, and then he starts sliding, but not a lot. He's not sliding as much. And he's got a nice line through here. He's going to get a nice turn in, right? So that's, could be the car setup, right? But his car looks really nice in these conditions. Um, but look at the line, right? So he's hit his apex, comes around, late apex here, so that's awesome, right? So behind him, we've got Jason, and going through the sweeper, it's a little wide in the sweeper, right? And that puts him really, really wide. And then wide again. So he's taking, I don't know, an extra 5 feet of travel distance compared to Alfred, right? You see Alfred gets the sweeper nice, and then he hits his apex, and then he's got a really nice late apex setup. And then the different line behind. So we're going to run out of shot here, but you'll notice how Alfred's car's pointing more towards the corner at this point, and then Jason's car is a little bit late on rotation. Now, that could be car setup, that could also be comfort level with the rotation. Everybody has a different comfort level as far as how fast the rotation is. But when we talk about rotation, this is what we're talking about, right? So you'll notice that everybody kind of turns at different rates before they actually get to the corner, right? So where am I? I'm going through the chicane here. So, well, let's watch Ed. So Ed's in front of us, and Ed, you'll notice how early he's turned, how early he turns in, right? And then hits his apex. So it's kind of a predicting where the car is going to go. And this happens really quickly. Obviously, you wouldn't really get this just from driving unless you're, a savant of some sort. But right? So the car turns before the corner, the rotation is initiated before the corner, right? And then where am I at? So I'm coming through, turned a bit late, rotated a bit late. You'll see how the corner doesn't go as nicely as Ed's did, right? So going through here, right? So again, we're trying to get the rotation done early, as early as possible. Boom. So we're actually rotating the car well before so that we can create more acceleration zones, right? So here we go. Try to um, try to keep all of this in mind, and then if you have a camera, then use it. If somebody wants to put a camera up for races, again, mine is not good enough to sit there like John's did. But it's really useful for everybody to kind of look, right? So you want to get that rotation in as early as possible and then accelerate. All right, so that was just a quick little thing because I noticed there was other people in the shot here, so maybe that'd be a little bit of it would be helpful. So I usually start my laps, you know, psychologically speaking, mentally speaking, I usually start my laps right at the beginning of the straightaway. So beginning of the straightaway for me is a reset, right? So no matter what's happened the previous lap, so whether my my lines were off or I've hit some things or whatnot, it doesn't matter. I'm this is where everything starts fresh. And it's really helpful because sometimes, you know, things can snowball. So you hit a couple things, you hit a couple things, more, and your whole run falls apart. So usually I reset every lap at this point where it's not like you take a deep breath because you only have like, you know, a second on the straightaway, but it's a good mental like, okay, done, let's start the cycle again for the next corner. So straight away you line up on the outside. The sweeper is going to be outside, inside, outside, kind of a classic corner. It is angled, so that's really, really useful. And going through the sweeper is fairly straightforward. You can attack it as long as you turn early enough, and then slow down in the angled portion of the sweeper. And then I usually will attack the rest of the sweeper. So after I've made the corner and the car has stopped sliding towards the outside, I usually attack that sweeper to gauge what trajectory my car takes, right? So I try to get it rotated. So if it's over rotating and then it looks like I'm going to hit the inside board, then I try to carry more speed through the second part of the sweeper to push that trajectory out, right? The whole time I'm aiming for the turn into the chicane. So basically where Ed is ahead of me at the turn in of the chicane, that's where I'm aiming for while my car is in the middle of the sweeper, right? So that's one or two corners ahead, right? And then I deal with what comes between those things as it comes, right? But that's the setup, right? So that's kind of 2-3 corners ahead is the setup. So as we go through, the chicane is an interesting part because the chicane is quite low speed, and then it's just a matter of going in nicely. The nicer you can go into it, the better exit you'll have, the better setup for the exit you'll have. I'm going to use Ed's line in this one as an example as opposed to mine because he's got a really nice exit line. So you'll notice how he arcs perfectly. So his car is pointed directly at the right hand apex, right? So his car is already pointed in the right direction, right? And you'll notice how early he has to turn in order for that to happen. Comparatively, I'll come in, I've cut it off a little bit, so my trajectory is a little bit more shallow. So I have to get the car overly rotated, right? So that what that does is it basically points me in the wrong direction, right? So my car is pointed straight at the driver's stand when it should be pointed slightly towards the right-hand corner. So let's see if we can get Ed back, right? So you'll notice how nicely Ed gets to turn in, hits his apex and come out, whereas my car is a little tighter, right? So it's a little, the transition is not as nice, like not as nice, you see? And then all of these little differences, those are the differences that at the end of the lap, result in, a half a tenth or a tenth, right? Because there's a bunch of corners and all of the differences add up. So coming in front of the driver's stand, I try to get on the power. You want to stay in the middle. That's where all the traction is. If you go too far to the inside or too far to the outside, the carpet is considerably dirtier than it is on the line. And one of the problems with that is that once you go offline, the tires will get dirty, and it will take you a few corners, if not a lap, to get them back clean again. And once you get them clean, it'll be fine. But in that meantime, you might make some mistakes because the car will either be looser or it'll push or it'll just act differently for you. So you have to be careful and aware if you go offline. So going in here, you want to brake early and again try to get the car rotated as quickly as possible, right? You want to get it pointed in the right direction as early as possible so you can get on the gas, right? So you want to slow down in time, rotate the car, and then gradually get on the power so you can build up the acceleration you want out. So you want to elongate the acceleration zones, right? The more time spent on the gas, the better. Whether it's quarter throttle, half throttle, partial throttle, full throttle, whatever, right? But as long as you're moving in the right direction, right? And so we're in there. So notice how we come out wide here, right? So because of where the dot is, you have to come out wide and rotate the car, right? So if you go tight, then you have to slow down, turn right, and then turn left. But because you go wide, you can rotate the car early enough so that now it's pretty much a straight shot. See what I'm saying? So then you go straight. Again, here it's a decreasing radius turn, so it's tight, and then it widens out. So you want to be accelerating through this corner as early as possible once the car is rotated. And in modified, you also rotate the car with the throttle, right? So as you're squeezing the throttle on, the car starts rotating, and then you can shoot out of the corner. So the acceleration zone is actually from here all the way to about here, right? So this is where you would kind of start slowing down for the corner, right? So when you get to the beginning of the straightaway, you kind of want to do a V shape. So I go in and then I rotate the car and then I come out, right? So you'll see like a distinct rotation, and right there, that little where the rear gets loose, just that point where the rear gets loose, that's me cracking the throttle, right? So I'm just cracking the throttle, so the car rotates, sits, and now I'm starting to squeeze the throttle, right? You're starting to squeeze the throttle. Depending on how late in the run it is and how dead your battery is, by that time it's a much lower voltage. You can either get from cracking the throttle to 3/4 or full. It really all depends, right? So, and then you're back doing it all over again, right? So the things you want to avoid are, you'll notice here, where are we? Oh, Ed's just had his crash. So let's see if we can do a lap here. So inside, outside, drift out, get the rotation, late apex. See, ideally I would want to be pointed more towards the basketball hoop here, but I either went in too fast, didn't slow down enough. That dot is awkward for me, so I have a bit of a, I don't want to hit it, so I usually stay wide in places I'm not comfortable with, right? There we go. Right, so nice arc, nice and close to the board. See, now I'm pointed in a much better direction than the previous lap. And every single time you're doing a lap, you need to be consciously addressing the issues you had the previous lap, right? So you want to notice that things are going wrong and be like, okay, I'm not going to do that next time. You know, I've improved this corner here. I've improved the entrance to the chicane. This is went a bit wide, so that's not great, right? But so this being wide here was caused by being wide here. So I got on the gas. Look how now this is, my car is rotating. I'm really getting on the gas, right? So now the car's doing a four-wheel drift, so that's thrown me off for this corner, right? But by the time you get, okay, so I'm wide now, so the thought process is, okay, I'll get a better, easier next corner, which is what happens, right? So I get a really sweet acceleration through this corner. So I've changed how I do the last little straight before the hairpin because I was wide here, right? So you're never gonna get the same lap every single, you know, if let's say the lap is, I don't know, 11 flat, you know, 11 flat, 11 flat, 11 flat, you know, that each of those laps are not identical, right? So you sort of have to manage, if you make a mistake, how to recover that time as best as possible. So just because I made a mistake here and I went wide doesn't mean I just throw out the whole lap, right? I don't throw it out and then just kind of go wild until I cross the line again. I'm aware that I made that mistake here. It over rotated, so now I'm getting on the gas way more aggressively because I have my next left-hand corner is way more open than it would have been if I had a nice tight line like Ed does, right? So the delay of me going wide is made up by the fact that I can get on the gas earlier and harder to make the next corner. So yeah, I'm not sure. Hopefully this is helpful. See, I went super wide here, right? Super wide. But then that gave me a better entrance to the chicane, right? So that was my solution for that is, oops, I blew this corner, but now I can take advantage of that because I'll be able to get way better rotation into the chicane. And if that rotation is that much better, then maybe I'll have to rethink. Maybe that wide is the right way to go. I don't know, right? But you have to experiment and consciously be making these decisions, right? So adjusting your speed into the corner, out of the corner, through the corner, just constantly thinking about it and just being aware of it, right? So take it a little bit past not hitting things, right? All right. Yeah, okay. We'll see you guys on Saturday. Hopefully this was helpful. I was hoping to do something actually useful because the other one was kind of more entertainment and chuckles. So hopefully this helps. All right, thanks.